message that someone, okay. Diana has spent years in the field, and her specialty, she's had many spiritually transformative experiences, and her specialty is supporting near-death experiencers as they integrate and process their experience. Also, on our writing team, on our team for the 12 steps for NDE integration, is Jim Bruton, and Jim is an experiencer. He had a plane crash. He built a plane himself, and if you haven't seen his session, certainly you're welcome to review some of our past videos. He did speak to us about his near-death experience, so he is an experiencer. And last January, he came and spoke with us for the second time. And while he was talking with us, he shared that he had written the book, The In-Between, and a second book as a follow-up to The In-Between. And he mentioned he was working on a third book. And while he was presenting, he talked about some of the challenges that he had as a near-death experiencer, especially with the return and what a different person he felt like after his return. And he had built it's a French aircraft, a Flying Flea. It's a very small aircraft. He had built it, and it did crash in one of the test flights. And he had a very extreme situation, and did have a near-death experience during that experience. But amazingly enough, when his plane crashed, it was at a Boy Scout camp in Western Connecticut, and there just happened to be a gentleman standing on the edge of the lake where his plane crashed, and that gentleman just so happened to, this one-time only event, had his cell phone on him. So when Jim's plane went down, he went over to help him, and he just so happened to be a retired police officer who was trained in trauma response. So had a lot going for him to help Jim, and was able to call for Lifestar to come and get Jim and to bring him to some health care. So Jim recovered and has been helping, writing a lot and speaking a lot, and has helped us craft this. So tonight I'm going to start with a short video from Diana, because she is not able to join us in person. So I'm going to start with this video here to give you a little bit more information about Diana.
Hi, my name is Diana Marquez Lyons, and some of you may know me as Diana DiFranco. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I am certified by ASSIST as a mental health provider. I want to first thank Jim and Bethany for inviting me to be a co-author in the book for the 12-step principles of the integration of the near-death experience. I've had the intention in this endeavor to allow God's divine love to guide me, which I think is good for everyone. Integrating a near-death experience and the after effects are especially challenging when the near-death experience is a spiritually transformative experience. An experience is spiritually transformative when it causes people to perceive themselves and the world profoundly differently by expanding the individual's identity, by augmenting their sensitivities, and thereby by altering their values, their priorities, and appreciation, and the appreciation of life purpose increases. A near-death experience and the after effects, you could find it in books, in movies, in social media, only for the positive qualities. The same is not true when it comes to the challenges of a spiritually transformative experience. And acknowledgement of these challenges could be very comforting for those who have endured and continue to endure the challenges of integrating these experiences. Now, the 12-step principles are not just for the experiencer. They are also for the significant others, for their family and friends, and even for mental health professionals who are working with experiencers. A near-death experience or spiritually transformative experience could be very baffling, could be very challenging and distressful for the family and friends who are listening to these experiences, because they're also experiencing the grief and the loss of the relationship they had prior to their loved one having this experience. So that's something to be considered. Now, the strategies that we're suggesting in the process of integration with the 12-step principles are coming from the following resources. First, from ASSIST research studies and resources, of course, from ASSIST research and resources, and also from the research study done by Marie Grace Brooks. And she found in the study 12 practices, behaviors, and habits that were rated by all 249 participants who met the criteria for having integrated their experiences as essential in their integration process. So this is very, very helpful. We're also including the findings of Yolaine Stout, who happens to be the founder for ASSIST. And she also identified 6 significant challenges that people go through when they integrate these experiences. And lastly, I'm suggesting strategies coming from my own personal practice, working with almost 200 near-death experiencers who have been integrating their experience into their lives. And I might add, from the integration of my own personal experience. As far as the experiencer, I have to say, give yourself time and space. Be gentle with yourself. This process of integration takes a long time. And for the loved ones, and also for mental health professionals, listen. Listen to these experiences with a heart open, centered in love and compassion. And of course, if you do this, you're not going to be judging them. And give your loved one or your client the time and space to integrate this experience. And of course, there is a lot more to say, but this is how much time I have. So thank you so much. And it's been an honor to participate here. Thank you.
As you can see from her introduction, she really brings so much to this work. The next piece that I'd like to share with you is a presentation that we have been working on that will guide us through this, the 12 steps. So I'm going to go to that. And while I did your recording, I think what I'm going to do is just talk us through these 12 steps instead of, let's see, that takes up the space. Great. Instead of playing the recording for you. So, all right, let me just go backwards here. So it is the 12-step NDE integration principles for navigating the process. And Jim Bruton and Diana are working with me to do that. And so really the question that we ask ourselves is why? What is the purpose of an NDE integration 12-step process? So we have some history here. Raymond Moody published his pioneering text, Life After Life, in 1975, where researchers alongside everyday people have been grappling with the concept of near-death experiences. And the literature is full of studies describing the sequence of events that NDEers experience, right? The Grayson scale, the after effects of NDEs, and debating the physical and scientific merits of the experience. And Dr. Jeffrey Long estimates that nearly 750 people every day have a near-death experience. And in 2000, Williamson and Carson presented an IANDS paper on NDEs and the 12 steps from Alcoholics Anonymous. And they likened the spiritual transformation reported by AA co-founder Bill W. to an NDE. And that was 2000. And the connection between spiritually transformative experiences and near-death experiences is, I think it's still developing now. And people still separate them, but there is a lot of shared ground between those two, spiritually transformative experiences and near-death experiences. So William and Carson, in their paper in 2000, I have a quote here, right? The inspiration for the 12 steps came about as a result of an NDE-like experience. A full-blown NDE is similar to the first 5 of the 12 steps, and we believe that the remaining 7 steps can serve as a guide for the NDEer to reintegrate into being in this world. And the 12 as a whole, a guide for just about anyone trying to be happier. So while the NDE and AA experiences are different, there are lessons in the work that Alcoholics Anonymous and other recovery programs have uncovered that can guide NDEers on the path to a peaceful, integrated life. And we have more inspiration, right? Over time, many NDEers have written their personal accounts or shared them through movies and blogs and podcasts and other kinds of online media. And in 2006, Stout, Jacquin, and Atwater, and that's PMH Atwater, they wrote a paper and they called attention to the general interest in the NDE and really the fascination that people have with all the different stories about near-death experiences. But they also noted that there seemed to be very little interest or attention paid to the very real personal, emotional, and spiritual needs of experiencers. So we found that call inspiring. And in fact, when Jim was presenting last January, and he said he was working on his 3rd book, I was curious about what that book was. And when he was talking, he said, gosh, it would be really helpful if there was a 12-step process for NDEers. And so I wrote to him the next day. I said, Jim, is that the book you're writing? And he said, no, but I would like to. So that's kind of how we got started. And we looked deeply into the literature for ways to support and develop our thinking around this. So at first it was just Jim and I, but then Diana joined us in May, and really it's taken off since then. So there's many authors, accounts, and research around near-death experiences. The International Association for Near-Death Studies, there's a link here. ASSIST, which is the American Center for the Integration of Spiritually Transformative Experiences. That is another wonderful resource. There's a link to the Stout, Jacquin, and Atwater 2006 article from the Journal of Near-Death Studies that talks about the 6 major challenges. And again, this is all research-based, based on hundreds and hundreds of interviews with experiencers. And then in 2019, Dr. Marie Grace Brook, we have been in contact with her. She's just a phenomenal researcher. She did research using an inventory or a survey with many, many questions. The title of her research is Struggles Reported Integrating Intense Spiritual Experiences, Results from a Survey Using the Integration of Spiritually Transformative Experiences Inventory. So that is another tool that has been brought to this work. And Dr. Marie Grace focuses on spiritually transformative experiences. And as I mentioned earlier, the link between spiritually transformative experiences and near-death experiences is a body of literature that we're building, but it's not a common connection that people make in the historical literature, but we're building that bridge. Another article in 2020, Pella Vinova made a call to counselors. She asked, what kind of support do NDEers need? What issues or problems may lead experiencers to seek help? And I have another quote here from her research, which I did draw on. I found that on the ASSIST website, ACISTE. She says 10% of experiencers reported seeking help for some problem with other people, including issues stemming from other people not being able to understand the experience of the NDEer. In addition, NDEers reported miscellaneous issues, such as trying to figure out their purpose after coming back, or dealing with an intense desire to go back home to the non-physical realm they experienced during the NDE. And these are all very common and cited by many of the researchers that we've read. So then the question is, what are the 12 steps? So we have drafted these 12 steps, and here they are. The first one is understand you returned for a reason. And I'm just going to read them and then finish the presentation, and then we can come back to this slide. Understand that you returned for a reason. Number 2, reality has shifted. Number 3, accept, embrace, and surrender to your truth. Number 4, conduct a deliberate review of yourself before and after or pre and post your NDE. Number 5, surrender to your new understanding of self. Number 6, conduct a comprehensive empathy walk. And that empathy walk is not only through your eyes and having empathy on your life, but also having empathy for the people around you in your life who love you and who expected you to recover from this event and continue to be who you were. But you're different now. So conduct a comprehensive empathy walk to better understand other people's experiences of you. Number 7, seek inner and NDE peer guidance. Excuse me. So similar to the 12-step recovery programs, seeking peer guidance is a really important piece of the integration process because we need a peer, someone who has had an NDE or other spiritually transformative experience, to give us some reassurance about how different we feel, and support to tell us you're not crazy. This is just something that you experienced, and let's talk about it. I understand. So it's a non-judgmental peer support that we're recommending. Number 8 is build and deepen relationships. It seems silly almost to say that, but because so many people come back from an NDE and have such a passion for their relationships and such a sensitivity to other people around you. But that building and deepening relationships is a really important step. Number 9 is show gratitude for the love and support others have shared to facilitate your recovery and integration. So reflecting on that and taking stock of all the contributions that other people are making to help you physically recover, perhaps if you had a death experience that requires that kind of, a slower process for recovering, but also your recovery and integration is complex. Number 10, commit to continuous self-examination without judgment. Number 11, deepen into a relationship with your higher self. And number 12, when you are ready, be a support to others through the active practice unconditional love. And these are the 12 steps that we've drafted so far. And a note here, we want to recognize that the near-death experience is highly personalized. There are similar characteristics, and we have the Grayson scale, which accounts, helps us track, different sequences of events, both the leaving while you're there and then the return. But everyone's experience is going to be customized exactly for them as what they need. So these steps, these 12 steps, you're going to experience them differently. They'll be experienced differently by each person, and some may not resonate with you. The nice thing about them is that they're non-linear. So you don't have to go in order. You can say, I want to work on number 8, or geez, I really want to work on number 12. And that's okay. Because just like the near-death experience has a lot of non-linear components, these steps too, you may reach out for one of them to explore, but you don't feel like you have to go in a particular order. And above all, we ask that you have compassion for yourself and for others as you work through this process. So in conclusion, the NDE integration is a process, and we ask that you be loving to yourself and others, and that kindness and empathy begin within. So nurture those seeds within you for kindness and empathy, because that and love will help you move through and come to a place of peace. So some discussion, right? Where would you like to go with this new approach? And before I go to this discussion, I do just want to express appreciation. We have had divine guidance from Source, and we also have the very wise voices of dear friends. And here are some of our friends that have helped us and contributed to this. So Susan Redwine, Tina Angeli, Jack Lardis, Susan Hubbard, Dr. Marie Grace Brooke, who has made herself accessible to us, Yolaine Stout, and the Farmington, Connecticut NDE support group, where this all began. So with that said, I'm going to go backwards to our 12 steps. Sorry, this is taking, there we go. And I'll pause here and ask if there are any questions. Okay, and I see Lori has her hand up.
Am I always first? Bethany, I think that the work that you three have done is absolutely wonderful. And I like the steps that you've listed, and a few of them resonated with me. And, you know, the first thing was finding people who had experienced something like what I experienced, and getting the support from this group and others I've reached out to has been truly, truly the best thing, you know, that for being able to integrate what happened. The second thing is finding purpose. And for me, I resonated with that finding purpose. That's difficult. You know, because if you're injured or you were near death, I was very sick for a long time from the mold exposure that caused my NDE. So I kind of have two purposes now. I enjoy being a member of this group and helping to contribute to invite speakers, sharing what I can about my experience. And my second purpose, which is actually right now in the news in Connecticut, that our legislators are trying to develop mold standards. and it's being recognized that it's causing serious health issues. And I am a part of that. I've been meeting with state legislators, and I've become an advocate for we shouldn't have mold in our indoor environments. But there's a lot more to that with the other steps that you've outlined that I hadn't thought about. So, you know, I really like what you put together, and there's a lot of things in there that I see that I myself would like to continue to delve into. And just as a note about my inspiration for continuing my mold advocacy, recently in the news last week, a man from Florida, 26 years old, died from mold exposure after the storm. FEMA wouldn't help him. Their house flooded, then a pipe burst. He tried to clean it himself, and he had an asthma attack, and he went into anaphylactic shock, and then he passed away. So he did make it. He came to me and told me, Lori, you have to keep going. You have to help save others and tell them that mold is very dangerous. And so I feel spirit, and I feel different spirits, and I'm also trying to integrate that gift in what I do. So thank you so much, Bethany and Jim, and I forget the name of the other person that's helping.
Diana. Yeah, Diana.
But I appreciate that, and I also appreciate, like, I see Krista Marie is here. I've been in touch with Krista Marie, and she's going to be one of our speakers soon, and just love to have you here tonight, Krista. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lori. That's great. And I didn't explain, Jim isn't able to join us tonight. Also, I can't remember if I explained, he had a recent medical procedure and is healing from that, and just wasn't able to join us today. So, yeah. But Lori, that's a beautiful gift that you received, to have that visit from that gentleman. Okay, and Tina shared that her mic's not working. So one of the things that we wanted to do tonight, oh, okay. Jane has a question, so I will turn to Jane. Oops, and Jane, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Perfect, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I have been in a 12-step program for 36 years. And I was also, well, my NDEs were in childhood, and I'm still processing that, but I'm looking forward to using these 12 steps. They're different, of course, from the AA 12 steps, and I think they're very appropriate for this, for the NDE. And they're gentle. They just, I think you did a really good job. The people, you guys who put this together, I think they'll really help people get to where they need to be. It's because, man, this is a huge thing to deal with. I mean, I had more than one, so I'm having, you know, before I could even deal with it, I had to deal with trauma and all kinds of stuff and get to the point where I could actually look at my NDEs. It took a long, long time. And so I'm still processing, and I'm looking forward to using these steps to help me with that. So thank you very much.
That's great, Jane. Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Okay, because I know there's meetings that, like, AA has, where people join together, and they come together in a group, and there's generally someone who leads the group and someone who speaks at the group. Can you talk a little bit about how this might work in a small group setting?
There are two kinds of meetings. There are speaker meetings, and there are just group sharing meetings. And the group sharing meetings, in the Midwest, if you have a huge, like a room full of 100 people, they will break up into smaller groups and have a group discussion of maybe 10 people at a time in each group. Now, in other parts of the country, they don't do that. They will, if there's 100 people there, they will have the meeting until all 100 people have spoken. Like they'll sit in a huge circle, and you know, but then those meetings go on for hours, and of course the speaker meetings are just like, you know, the group sits and listens to the speaker, and sometimes they might have discussion afterwards, but that's how the meetings tend to go. So that's you know, that's kind of how they operate.
Yeah, and it's a very successful program. It's helped millions of people.
Yes.
Yep. And Dr. Long said, you know, 750 people a day have an NDE. So there might be a few people out there who might benefit from having maybe a sharing group, that kind of format. And I know that we've had a speaker format for many, many years. So thank you so much, Jane, for sharing that.
Yeah,
insight.
I used to run the discussion groups, you know, as opposed to the speaker meetings. I used to run the regular meetings where we would have, you know, just discussion, and we'd sit around and each person would take a turn around the table. And what's really important in a group is to have rules about crosstalk, because what can happen is people will start, you'll talk, and then people want to comment on what you said. But sometimes that can lead to some arguments and toxicity you don't want in a meeting. So we kind of have to keep a rule that one person at a time speaks. And if you want to follow up with somebody, you can talk to them after the meeting. You know, that's kind of how we manage it for, so that everybody has a turn and it avoids fights. So it's helpful.
Yeah.
Do it that way.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Mhm.
I know
Sure.
we have protocols in our group too when we do our online meetings.
Yes.
And I see that, you know, we go over the controls and we
Yep.
share a protocol so that everyone has an opportunity to have a, you know, make a comment or ask a question. And so it sounds like it's a similar
Yes.
process.
Oh yeah, this is like classic, you know, group psychology, group dynamics, you know, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jane.
Mhm.
Bethany, Michael just fixed my my audio, so I'm back.
Well, welcome
So,
back.
Kathy Trueheart and then Rob Sahi have raised their hands.
Yes, thank you. Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Oh, thank you so much, Bethany, for the work that you've done, and for Jim as well. I'm disappointed that he wasn't here tonight, and wishing him well on his recovery. So I just want to quickly say how it's just so interesting, and I really look forward to meditating on it for a while to kind of see what each one is here. And because my near-death experience was when I was 5, you know, I don't have those issues of having to I don't remember that part, but I still have, you know, a lot of the thing with feeling driven for a purpose-driven life, and my spiritual life is always first and foremost. So, and I love AA meetings. I find that AA meetings are better than any counseling, professional counseling that I've ever had. I've gotten more from an AA meeting, and I haven't been in about 20 years, but I'm actually could stand one now. And I was just thinking how wonderful it would be to go to an AA meeting because you want the sobriety, but an AA meeting, a sobriety AA meeting with NDEers. And so I think that would just be the frosting on the cake. Now, I would be the first one, and I would even host it at my house, and we could do a labyrinth walk. So if there is not one out there, then I would just, I don't know the principles of AA that well. My sister's been in it for, oh God, 30 some odd years. But I just, yeah, I would just be open to creating something that's a little more specific, you know, AA for NDEers, if that's a thing. So blessings, and thank you for letting me speak. And thank you, Susan and Jane, for your responses. I really appreciated those as well. Blessings.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Rob?
I just think this is phenomenal. You've done a great job with it. Speaking both an experiencer as well as a therapist, this is something I could have used in 91, all right, to be honest with you, and I can still use today. Have you thought of even working on developing a group format? You can segue, and Jane was very good in presentation. You can segue where the facilitator is more someone that the person can go back to if there's a problem, because you're talking about extremely emotional issues involved in a group setting. And what you need is somebody who is comfortable enough to be able to take that person and say, hey, listen, talk to me afterwards, or whatever, or interrupt where it's appropriate. Say, okay, and this would be a live meeting if we had them live. Okay, we'll talk about that and be able to do that. And listen, Assist has a lot of really good training in that area too. Now we can incorporate that. So I'm going to say that you guys are working, I mean, this is really great. I hope you present at the IANDS meeting, okay? But I also think that maybe you can say, and look at people who've been training and doing groups. We think this could be a group format in this manner, and then add to it. Now, it's subject to change, of course, and you would add it as a appendix or maybe even a separate book from the one you're publishing initially. But this is something, because you and I just spoke, there is nobody out there that I'm connecting with other than via here who's had a near-death experience. And you start really feeling alone. And when you bring it up, you get these weird looks and you feel more isolated. You say, I just want to sit down with somebody. I love what Tina go, Tina, you know what I'm talking about? He goes, yeah. So, yeah, isn't it great? Yeah. I don't have that here, and I miss it. And that's one of the things I really miss about our meeting. I need that. I want it. It can be done. But you've already got a great format here. I think it's just phenomenal. And go ahead and see if you can't. And look, Diana's had training. I don't know if she's a member of American Group Psychological Association or not, but she's had a lot of training in groups. She can help you. I'm sure Jim can help. All you, and you can help. I mean, think, how would you present a group? Jane would be a great resource. All the training she's had, all the stuff she's active in, for develop a group format where the facilitator. Now, in AA, it's different, but you would have a facility trained for the group. All right, doesn't have to be a licensed clinical social worker or somebody, just somebody who has enough to say, let me refer you to, talk to them and hold them, because this is going to happen when you talk about near-death experiences. You're going to have somebody be able to stand in and hold that person for a little bit and say, it's okay. You're okay. You will be okay. Just step through it. You just need that person to hold them. That's all. Give them a hug and say, you're going to be fine. Call me tomorrow. Okay. All right. That holding is so important for that integration to follow through. Because if you all of a sudden dropped off, you end up like me, where you have people all of a sudden you're down. That person's going to feel lost and crazy, because that's what everybody looks at you like. You're crazy. Okay? And yet we know it's beautiful. Not crazy. So, hey, as I say, just kudos, man. You guys have done a great job. I just really impressed with what you've done.
Well, thank you so much for that feedback and the comments. And we did get a question from the Boston IANDS asking, let's see, Catherine from the Boston group would like to know if you are considering adding to the title STE as well as NDE to catch a wider audience. And we did talk about this Catherine, thank you for the question. We did talk about this, and my passion is NDE. Jim is a passionate NDE person, and Diana also had a shared death experience and a spiritually transformative experience, but has not had an NDE. But I think for this step of our journey, we really want to focus on supporting the NDE community. That's where our passion is. So we're going to keep that focus. But I do know that there's another group, and I can put it in. We have another session planned, and I can research it and provide that link to you. So so that you can access that. But I'm going to move on to the next question, I think, which is Betty.
Paul.
It's Paul.
Yeah.
Sorry, we have a number of different email accounts. Hello, everybody. I thought that was a really great overview. Having background like one of the gentlemen, this is my third time on your calls. I've run clinics. I'm an NDE survivor. There are sectors of the clinical step ladder that don't consider. There are people like Mr. Bruton who had premonition that he would fall out of the sky in an aircraft. That's a pre-warning type NDE. Then there are those that are veterans that have no warning whatsoever, and they're in a violent scenario. And there are those that they go through difficult childhood experiences, which I won't cite here, that are not known to the general public. And then there are those that might go through an NDE suicide that's redirected. So there's a lot of different categories. I think I know a number of veterans in a couple different categories that have been through experiences, and it's really difficult to figure out how to put everybody together. But I think you've got a good smooth mix. And on one of the calls I was in, this is my third one, you had a couple veterans that stayed on an extra 45 minutes. And sometimes veterans that don't know they're going to get hit by a bullet or don't know they're going to get hit by a bomb are very similar to those people that go through things in childhood. So I think you're doing a great job. And keeping the balance without infighting, without power plays in these groups is super important. Having done work with violent gangs in prisons, and those kind of triangulations and manipulations of group dynamics are a threat to the safety of your circle. So just a comment. And cheers.
Thank you, Paul. M. Davis is next. M. Davis.
Hi. Hi, this is Sharon. And hello again.
Yes.
Just a comment too on your steps here. I think that when a person, and now I am not a doctor, I am not a veteran, but I do have a lot of experiences in certain areas. I think that when people go on this emotional and physical transition, whether it be the AAA or the NDE, whether it be sexual addictions or any other, I think that it's a transition out of oneself, creating that NDE. And I'm just trying to confirm what I'm interpreting. You transition from the self that you were and to experience all of that. It has to be an emotional, physical, and mental experience. Okay, you can, term it any one of those guides there. But I think, like you say, when you come back, it embraces all of that in addition to your spiritual soul, the soul of who you are, before the healing can actually start. Now, for some people, healing can occur over a period of many, many years. For others, it's almost like a confrontation of your experiences. And at that point, a piece of knowledge comes to you. And I just think that it's great the way you guys were able to put it together. And, just a comment on my interpretation of it. I think that that's great, but I think it will grow from here. And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Sharon.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
If there's no one else, I did want to go into more detail about the first 2 steps that we have focused on. And so maybe you can just talk for a few minutes. The first step is understand that you return for a reason, and really coming to terms with, see if I can get a little closer here. Coming to terms with your feelings about returning to your earth life. And, you know, people are going to have different experiences if they had a negative experience versus if they had a positive experience. And one of the challenges that we hear repeatedly in the accounts from people is when they've had an experience of that complete love, to have to return to this life is a real challenge. And a lot of times people wish for, I know Peter Panagore mentioned, you know, he said, I would never end my life. But every day started with, it's a good day to die. You know, the desire to return to that perfect love. So understanding your feelings about why you were sent back, that's really important and something that we need to work through. Also, identifying a process you can follow to safely navigate your feelings. So there are some things that you can do to process your feelings. So I have a 4-step process here that I'll just share briefly. But the first step in the process is just coming to terms with, what am I feeling? Because sometimes it's difficult. I know people say it's difficult to describe the experience, and it's also challenging sometimes to understand and identify the emotional response that you're having as well. So the first of 4 steps in navigating your feelings would be self-awareness, where you ask yourself, you know, what feelings or sensations do I have right now? Where in my body am I feeling it? Is it in my chest? Is it in my throat? Is it in my stomach? What thoughts am I having that indicate what I might be feeling? Are there any contradicting thoughts or feelings? Do I have any judgments on the thoughts or feelings that I have? Am I having any urges to suppress or move away from these feelings? And why is that? Because our emotions are a teacher for us. There really aren't any good or bad emotions. There's just our willingness to recognize the emotion and then work through our thinking to understand better why we're experiencing the emotion. The second step of this is to honor your feelings. So you want to recognize, you know, gosh, I'm crying. You know, sometimes people don't realize how moved they are. And maybe you're crying because you're angry or you're upset, you're sad, you're feeling some type of emotional pain, or it could be that you're very joyful. And if you're working through the process with a family member or a peer experiencer, that person on the other side, they might be able to read your mind. But here, you really need to be able to articulate, you know, to yourself as well as maybe your peer NDE support person. I know in AA, they're called sponsors, right? So in that field, you have a sponsor. Maybe having a sponsor is a really good idea for this program as well. I don't know, Kathy's nodding your head, yes. I'm sorry, Jane is. Yeah, so thank you for that. Let's see. Sometimes also you want to ask yourself about this feeling, how bad is it on a scale from 1 to 10? Am I having distressing physiological sensations? Is my face turning purple? You know, what can I do to tolerate this state? So a lot of times breathing into the feeling is going to help you. Maybe you need to relax. Maybe you need to go for a walk in nature. And I know a lot of the literature that we read and worked through for NDE experiencers speak about getting out in nature and spending time in nature, just as a tremendous calming effect, a centering tool. Yeah, so a lot of people are resonating with that. That's great. When you're processing your feelings, the next step in the stage, the third step, is to explore your options. Ask yourself, are there any needs that are going unmet? Do I feel misunderstood or unheard or disrespected? And sometimes if we're telling our spouse, someone that we've had a relationship with for a long time, I know my husband and I have been married 30 years, right? I can't imagine trying to tell him that my worldview is so different now. And, there might come times when I'm trying to explain something, but he's not an experiencer, so he might misunderstand. My children, one of the points Diana raises, that she raised in her talk when we had just her visit, is how do children respond when my mom loves my friends that I bring over as much as she loves me? Oh, that's good feedback, Deb. Thank you so much about the sponsor. So how do I help my children manage the new me also, because I love their friends as much as I love them? So there's no prioritized love, you just love. So explore your options. And the fourth step is to address the emotions. And in talking with Diana, one of the things that she was adamant about is about journaling to clarify your feelings and your thinking. So write down, today I feel whatever it is, or I have these, I'm crying, but I'm not sad. I just have tears pouring down my face. And there's all kinds of ways that a journal can help you work through and understand your own feelings. And then you may need to express your thoughts and feelings to a trusted, accepting person. So again, going back to the idea of having a sponsor, having an NDE peer, and testing your thinking and the words that come along with your thinking on someone who's not going to judge you. So you might say, I'm thinking about having this conversation with my son or my daughter or my mother, and can I just try it out on you, because I need to tell my mom that I can't tolerate this something that she wants me to do, or she's not hearing me. I feel misunderstood or not heard, and so on. So talk to a friend, but journal first so that you can clarify, because that can help you. And with technology these days, you can grab a cell phone and do a recorded journal. And just say, gosh, here's what I'm feeling right now, and do a little recording. There's a voice memo on Apple phones that you can use, and then go back and listen to it. And from another listener perspective, that can really help you with understanding how you feel and the intensity of those emotions. And what we know about emotions is that emotions, the intensity, comes and goes. It's not constant. You're not always going to feel this sad. You're not always going to feel this happy, right? And all the emotions in between. Anger is something that dissipates and diffuses when we focus on other things. If we feed the anger, of course, it'll grow. But if we focus on doing our housekeeping, which is something I love to do, you can find that the anger will go away, and you can come to better terms with other feelings that are behind the anger, other thoughts that are behind the anger. So letting the feelings pass is really important. Realigning yourself with your values. So if something happens and it affects you emotionally and you're struggling with those emotions, going back to what your values are, and certainly in your journal, putting your values in there, and going back to them so that you can at least have integrity and be authentic to your own personal truth. That's a really important part of resolving emotions that do come up that feel overwhelming. You can also make plans to make amends with people who most need your grace, or those whose grace you most need, right? Sometimes during the life review on the other side, you come to realize, wow, you know, I really hurt this person. I really hurt my daughter, or I really hurt my husband. And so through journaling, through thinking about it, through talking with a peer or NDE sponsor, and really processing what it is, because during that life review, you may feel compelled to come back right away and say, oh, honey, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize it. But maybe you're not quite ready because there's a lot that you need to sort through. So take your time, be patient with yourself, and work with your an NDE peer in order to process those emotions. So that is kind of step number one in a quick summary. Are there any questions or feedback about that? Okay, and I see Tina has her hand up.
Hi, Bethany.
Hi.
Yes, my way of journaling ended up being my book that I published about 3 years ago, which happened quite a few years after my second near-death experience. And that was very healing for me to be able to just get it out of me without being concerned about what people thought. And so it's still being read and still get feedback, which is absolutely wonderful. That's what's been working for me so far.
That's great. Yeah, and it's also worked for me, Tina. I loved your book. And I go back and read it often. So there's a lot of wisdom in there. And even if you feel you're not getting anywhere with the journaling, you can always go back to it and reacquaint yourself and read it again. And it might help someone else too, like your work has done.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I see a lot of messages going back and forth, and I feel like we're off to a really good start with our steps. And Jane, I do have a question again for you. And I know this, you know, I'm so glad you're here and you have the experience, and Kathy too. What we'd like to do is, there were additional meetings that were shown in the invitation, because we are wanting to really have thorough conversations about each of the steps with experiencers. And so we're planning a series of, it's a little bit different than how we've done things in the past, right? We have a series of sessions, which at the bottom of your, let me just pull up the invitation here and show you where this is. But on the invitation to this meeting, here we go. Here we go. There's Jim and there's Diana. Oh, hold on a minute. You may not be seeing this.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is the invitation that you received, and here's our lovely Diana and our talented Jim, right, and myself. And we really want to work through the steps. And so we've set up we didn't want to interfere with the speaker meetings that we have, because those speakers are so important to us. And but we did want to provide more support to members, and we also wanted to really work through the steps. So what we decided to do was to have a second meeting on 2 weeks later on a Monday to go through the steps. So like on January 23rd, we're going to focus on steps 3 and 4. And then on February 13th, which is our regular meeting, Peter Panagore is joining us to talk about his second NDE, and we are so excited about that. But then 2 weeks later, on February 27th, we'll have another open forum like this, where we'll talk about steps 5 and 6 from the 12 steps. And then on March 13th, which is the regular March meeting, regular NDE support group meeting, we're going to review steps 7 and 8 with Diana and Jim. And then 2 weeks later on March 27th, we'll review steps 9 and 10. And we went up to March because in April, on April 10th, we actually have Krista Marie who's joining us. I'm so excited that she's going to be able to join us on April 10th for our regular monthly meeting. And then 2 weeks later in April, we will have a steps 11 and 12 that we'll focus on. And so because this is your group, each of you that's here, it's your group. In planning this, didn't want to impose, but do want to kind of get your feedback. Does this sound like a series of meetings or sessions, group NDE feedback sessions that you'd like to participate in? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Lori, did you want to add something?
Yeah, Bethany, I think that's a wonderful idea that you've presented it that way. And I actually did see that at the bottom, and I thought, what a great idea. And in addition to that, I did want to mention that CT-IANDS now has just sharing group sessions that you can join as well. And I haven't joined any of them yet, but that might be a future for this group that we offer something similar. Thank you, Bethany.
Yeah, thank you so much. And the goal behind having these meetings where we really drill into a couple of the steps at a time. Oh, that's good feedback, Rob. Thank you so much. He says you're doing exactly what a program would consist of. That's great. Is in referencing Jane and Kathy and your experience with the other 12-step programs, we want to make sure that we provide a resource to people that's really useful and helpful. And so I do have a question about the 12-step programs. Is there a focus on a particular step that's set before people go to the meeting? So is that like announced, like today we'll be working on step 6, or is it just it's organic and it comes out of the people who are at the meeting? Oh, Jane, go ahead.
There are a lot of different kinds of meetings. Like there are step focus meetings. There are meetings that focus on specific topics. So, you know, it's kind of like wide open. It's like whatever works best for the group and how, you know, how they, you know, what works well. You know, you could have a group focused on certain steps, or you could have a group focused on beginners, or you could have a group focused on people or more who've been doing this for a while. I mean, there's a lot of different angles you can take. So that's how they do it in AA. You know, they just have different kinds of meetings like that.
Great.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think for what we want to accomplish, we were invited to go back to the IANDS conference. Oh, and Rob says the AA, it's your sponsor that helps you work your steps. So it's your,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we were invited to go back to the conference, but we wanted to do some application and really kick the tires on the 12 steps that we started working on. And we also wanted to, because we are Connecticut people, we wanted to get the feedback from the Connecticut Farmington group. So because I think it would be, Connecticut seems to be the place where IANDS was born out of at UConn, right? And so this next step in the evolution of how we experience and integrate after the near-death experience, I think it's fitting that it come out of Connecticut in that tradition. So welcoming you to participate in the alternating sessions where we'll focus on particular things, and that seems like it would work for people, and there was a lot of great feedback on that. So thank you. Oh, Jane, go ahead.
Yeah, I think since we're just starting out, it's a really good idea to have group meetings that focus on specific steps because we're all new to this. We're all learning this. So I think that's a really good idea.
Okay, great. Thank you for that feedback. In the books that we're working on, the structure is that we do an overview of the step. Then we have the experiencer perspective. So Jim shares his experience. And we may want to include other people's experiences as well, because, you know, so that's something that we'd like to, you know, make open to our Connecticut, you know, our area local people that we have more access to expand on what we have in the text. So we have an experiencer perspective where we share that person's response to the step. We also have Diana's perspective, which she's a licensed clinical social worker. So she will, in the text, she offers insights not only to help the individual who's working through the step, but how to help your family member work with you or your loved one. Maybe it's, you know, maybe it's your spouse or the people at work that are suddenly shocked by what you're saying and doing as you've returned and questioning you and just not understanding you. So there's a lot of social settings that you encounter that are challenging. And then each chapter ends with a meditation on the step itself. So those meditations, we're working on writing those and recording them and putting them on our website so that people can access them as well. So, okay, and Tina, you have your hand open?
Yes. Hi, Bethany. I was thinking, this just came to me, that if you, I don't know how far you are into the book, but if you wish to use any parts of my book and quote in your book, I give you permission.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That's very generous. You know, anyone who shares something and we're able to include it in the book will certainly, you know, do that with your permission and also reference you and thank you. So I know that I will get a report from Google that tells me who was at this meeting, and I will add those names to our gratitude page. But that's what I intended to share tonight, and I'm going to, I think, stop our recording so that we can do anything else that we need to do before we close for the evening.
Oh, Lord.